Well, and even give a caveat. It's pretty cool. All right, today's training is on excessive heat because of the summertime, and recently we've got a lot of hot weather, so a lot of us tend to go out and do a lot of work out in the sun um, because we like to work in our yards, we like to take walks and stuff like that. We want to be able to recognize that we're experiencing any kind of heat illness. Or if we're walking with somebody, we also want to be able to look at somebody and say, you know what, they look like they're having symptoms of anything related to heat exposure. It's always good to know, and it's just the same thing I talked about, but there are different levels of heat exposure. We're going to go into them, and we're going to talk about the mild ones, and then we're going to talk about the ones that are really dangerous, which is heat stroke. People that get heat stroke end up having a lot of life-threatening situations, and especially in our ages. You know, we're more susceptible to heat stroke. Now, the one thing that everybody needs to remember in heat is that the body will try to compensate for excessive heat. And because of that compensation, the body might exert a little bit more blood pressure. You might have a rapid rate of the heart. And that's all just because they want your body to secrete fluids to keep yourself cool and stuff like that. So it's working hard. And of course, being the high risk, elderly, and people that are disabled. Surprisingly, I didn't realize this, and I was doing a study on this. Men perspire more than women. I never knew that. I thought it was just equal, but apparently, uh, genetically, we are more prone to perspiring than the women are. And of course, people that live in an urban area, because of the concrete, because of all the asphalt and stuff like that, we're more susceptible to the to heat. And plus, the concrete and the asphalt does reflect the heat, which makes it hotter. So that's something to keep cognizant of. If you're in an area, like if you're on the sidewalk, you want to get off the sidewalk and get into a shaded area with grass. Stay off the street. The different types of illnesses, like I mentioned before, apparently there are five, and I thought there were four, but there are five. You've got your heat rashes, and I'm going to play with my little. You got your heat rashes, you got your heat cramps, you got heat fainting, heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke. Now, people used to believe that heat exhaustion and stroke were the same thing, but they're not. They're different levels. And when we get into the presentation, you'll begin to notice that there is a certain difference. Even though we're talking about this during the hot weather, even mild weathers, and sometimes even during the wintertime, people can be suffering from heat exhaustion. Does anybody know why you would be suffering from heat exhaustion?
Yeah, if it's cold, you usually have a lot more clothes on.
That's correct. And a lot of times you're inside and you got the heaters turned up, you know, and then you're still walking around. So even though it's cold outside or in the wintertime, people can suffer from heat illness. And that's something that I didn't realize. I didn't neglect it to realize that, hey, you know what? That's right. I'm going to be wearing a lot of clothes. I'm going to be working around inside the house, you know, scrubbing the floors, whatever the case may be. My wife is probably laughing, but scrubbing the floors and stuff like that, and I could suffer from heat exhaustion. Heat rash. Some people get it, some people don't. It all depends on the actual individual. But heat rash is usually when your ducts, where the moisture comes out of your skin, get clogged up, and it starts to pool up or well up inside your skin. And a lot of the times it's because everybody puts on the what you call that skin. Oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment. For sunburns, suntan lotion. There we go. Suntan lotions. Some of them have a lot of oil base, and I don't have that problem getting suntan lotion. Very good. But anyways, the oil base, along with dirt and everything else, clogs up the pores, and you'll tend to have what they call the um, heat rash. Have you guys ever had a heat rash? George is trying to get back in.
I don't
No,
recall.
not
I
me.
don't think so.
So here's a picture of what a heat rash looks like. And as I mentioned, on your heat rash, hey George, welcome
Okay,
back. Just to
I'm
let
trying-
you know, we're back up. We're recording this, so watch what you say. This is going to be posted. We're talking about heat-related illnesses, and we're into heat rashes. And this is what a heat rash may look like typically on a person. Usually it's on their backs or their arms. But heat rash is because of this duct area. It's around your hair follicles are clogged up, and they start to swell up, and that's what you got this appearance. It's really gross looking. Common causes, like I said, it's because of the lotions and stuff like that, but also because you got excess skin that's covering over certain areas. I'm not saying because you're fat or anything, but they're covering certain areas of your body, and it plugs up the natural evaporation, so it starts to well up underneath the skin. Another reason for having skin rashes is having clothes that's too tight. For you guys that wear rubber clothes, that's also a reason for having that kind of problem. We'll go into that, George, with you and your rubber outfits.
Thank you. Ray,
Yes.
Ray, I actually had those symptoms all over me one day about 3 years ago. I was cutting hedges outside. It was really hot out, and I had a million red spots all over me when I came inside.
Yeah, usually the red spots will relieve themselves. So you don't have to worry about doing anything as far as medically or first aid. They do talk about washing yourself off with water, no soap, just water. What it does is loosens up any kind of clogging that your pores and stuff like that. A lot of times the soaps that we use have a type of lotion involved in it, or some kind of smoothing cream, and it will replug up your pores. So you want to avoid using that for your heat rashes. We talked about this earlier, even in the wintertime, because you're all bundled up in clothes. That'll happen as far as you'll have heat rashes because you're all bundled up and you're exercising, and there's no means for your sweat to evaporate. So it starts to clog up your pores and stuff like that.
Okay.
And again, heavy creams and lotions tend to clog up your sweat ducts. Treatment for heat rashes include home remedies, over-the-counter stuff like chamomile, hydrocortisone sprays, water, if you don't want to get that stuff. And one thing you want to avoid is scratching. And the one thing that happens when you have your rashes is you want to start scratching. And what happens when you start scratching?
Be irritated.
Yeah, you're irritated, and you also open up these blisters.
Okay.
You got these blisters underneath, and then you're opening yourself to infection. So you want to avoid scratching as much as you can. As I mentioned, try to get some water on you really quick, and usually that's the fastest way to relieve the issue of the rash. And then maybe that'll alleviate the need for you to want to scratch. And of course, the water, if it doesn't work, then you might want to go over to Rite Aid and get yourself some chamomile or calamine or whatever they want to call that lotion, and hydrocortisone. The next thing we're going to go into is heat cramps. How many of you guys had heat cramps before? I have.
Yep.
Many times. In the military, and also working in my other job, because we're always out in the sun and stuff like that. Didn't realize what it was. Of course, got some education on it. But heat cramps are the intermittent or involuntary spasms of your muscles. Why is your muscle spasming? Because you're getting a lack of chemicals potassium, fluids, and basically your muscle is reacting to that. It's trying to move because it thinks if it moves, it's going to get additional squirt of liquids into the system, or you're going to get the different kind of stuff that you have, like in Gatorade. Electrolytes is the word I'm looking for. There it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at a loss. I'm constantly having a senior moment. I don't know why.
Probably heat
Usually-
cramps.
The heat cramps in my brain. Heat cramps are usually occurring within your major muscle areas. So in your thighs, in your biceps, and stuff like that. Seldom do they occur in your phalanges or in your fingers. So most of the time, it's going to be happening in your thicker muscles, and it's usually because you're exercising. If you're out there jogging, if you're out there mowing the lawn, working, exceptionally working your muscles and stuff like that, that's when this kind of stuff happens. The effects of it are, like we talked about, dehydration, lack of electrolytes, imbalance. Researchers are talking about that the muscles are tiring due to excessive activity. One of the best ways to remedy your cramps is to stop exercising. And it's funny to hear that, because you got a lot of athletes, what they'll do is they'll have heat cramps, and what will they stop doing? They'll start jogging more, because they think that if they jog more, you're going to get more electrolytes in the muscles, which is not very true. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me, because it helps, especially with this presentation. Your first aid for heat cramps, stopped activity right there. Like I said, it's kind of a silly thing to say, but a lot of people don't realize they need to stop. Move yourself into a cool area underneath the tree, inside a house that's air conditioned. Drink plenty of fluids. And once you get your fluids ingested and you got your electrolytes through your Gatorade and stuff like that, then you can do some muscle stretches and stuff like that. Massage the muscle first, and then go into actual stretching and stuff like that, but not until you get some liquids into you. Otherwise, you're just going to damage your muscles even further. A lot of things that you have available in the house are your popsicles. Jello is a very good means of getting your electrolytes back in there. Of course, the big plus is water. Water is the big thing that helps you get your cramps out, get yourself in consuming some water. Fainting. There's this actual technical name for fainting, and I don't want to use it because I can't always say it. It's synopathy or something like that. See, I can't even say it. So I just say heat fainting. Has anybody experienced that, heat fainting, or felt like they're going to get ready to faint?
Yeah.
Yep, same here, me too. When I was going through the academy, the Sheriff's Academy, it was, of course, August in the heat. So we're out there, we just got done with the run, and we were going out and doing some defensive tactics. So we're wrestling around with each other. So I started getting what the symptoms were: lightheaded, I was getting nauseous, I was sweating profusely, more so than I usually am, and I was getting weak. This is the big thing. When I got near the fainting, I was starting to get dizzy. I fell down to the ground, and my drill instructor thought I was faking it. He kicked me a couple times. Get up! And I said, no, I'm not good. So that's when I learned that I was having. I didn't faint completely. I didn't go out. It started to get dark, but your vision starts to fade, becomes blurring. Your hearing gets muffled because all the blood is leaving these areas and going to an area that's being affected that needs the fluids the most. You get a tingling sensation all over your body. Not a fun feeling. And again, it's not one of your serious events, but still, it can be, at our age, it can be kind of disconcerting. So the causes of what's going on: your heart's failing to pump enough blood through your system. Your blood vessels are not toned, they're not opened up. They're starting to fall asleep or contract. Basically the same thing that's happening to me with my double vision. I had my artery started to collapse because I'm not exerting enough pressure on it. There's not enough blood going through the blood vessels. And there's probably a combination of all this. So what kind of treatment are we looking at when we have somebody that's fainted? At our age, fainting is not normal. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, because I'm old, I'm fainting." No, fainting is not normal. Even for the people that are young, fainting is not normal. And don't treat it as a normal situation. A lot of people kind of dismiss it. Don't dismiss it. It's not a serious condition, but you know it can be. If you're somebody that's fainted, you know, if they don't start breathing, if they're not reacting to you, I mean, call 911. There's a system that we used to call it activate the EMS, activate the emergency medical system, okay? Or bring the person to a nearest urgent care if you can't get an ambulance to you right away. For us, make sure that if they fainted, even though they might not have a heart condition, have somebody get in the AED, especially if we're in the clubhouse area, have them get the AED out just in case, because at our age, things go south really quick. So we're looking at treatment. Treatment, it depends on the individual. I'm not going to tell you this is the best way to handle heat fainting, but the things you want to take a look at, usually the fainting spells are rapid. It's just like a faint, they'll go out for 30 seconds or to a minute, they'll come back. So when they don't come back, that's when you start to realize that, hey, this is more of a serious condition as opposed to something that's minor. Make sure that even though the person recovers, that the person goes and sees their doctor, gets a medical checkup. A lot of times, because we think we're macho, we tend to dismiss that we need to go see a medical professional afterwards to make sure that we're okay. Oh, it's just a fainting spell. It's a small fainting spell. That's no longer the norm for us. We need to go out and make sure that we see a doctor afterwards, okay? And don't dismiss that. And like I said, if you got somebody that's fainted and is not recovering right away, activate the EMS, get on your 911. More likely they're going to need to have somebody monitor their heart. You're going to need to have an IV. You need to push in some fluids, okay? So that's something they need to be cognizant of. If they recover, fine. Go see a doctor afterwards. Heat exhaustion. This is the next level. This is almost where we start to get a little bit more of a dangerous situation. Heat exhaustion is basically your body is overworking itself to get cooler, trying to get more sweat out so you get your body temperature down. In humidity, it's a big factor. Out here, it's not that much of an issue. When I was in North Carolina during the hurricanes a few years back, we had a lot of people, and I would think because of there's humidity that there's no chance of getting heat exhaustion. Well, yeah, Nick, you're right. That's not true. Even though there's high humidity, there's not air circulation, which gives you the cooling factor. So even though you got a lot of moisture in the air, you need to have something to do the cooling. So we'll go into treatment here later on. But one of the things that you need is you need some air to go over your perspiration to cool your body down. Stuff that include, we talked about that, not ability to cool itself. Too hot of an environment. And look at that. George's got his kitty cat.
Oh, you can see her. Yeah, she's down here nibbling at my feet. She wants to be picked up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's cool. Lack of hydration. So if you're dehydrated, that's also a common cause for heat exhaustion. Basically, everything that you experienced for cramping and fainting all the way up to now, you're going to have the same. It's just a little bit more severe. So we talk about heat exhaustion. What are you going to have signs of? You're going to have a headache. You're going to have fatigue, weakness. Your skin's going to be moist. You're going to have a lot of water on your skin. Your blood pressure is going to go down. Your pulse rate's going to go up. you're not going to have enough circulation going on. There's going to be anxiety. There's going to be some panic going on. You're not going to want water. If that's the case, you're experiencing heat exhaustion. Your body temperature, it might be going down because your body is shutting down. Treatment. I mean, it's kind of common sense, but we're going to go over it. Make sure you get yourself cooled down, get yourself rehydrated, drink a lot of water, get yourself removed from the heat environment, put yourself inside a cool area. Ideally, you go inside a house that has air conditioning going on. You have bags of ice on certain areas of your body where there's a lot of blood circulation and advancements and stuff like that. Misting yourself with the excessive water is great, but you need to have a cooling source. So get a fan going on. If you have one of those electric fans, those portable electric ones, I would recommend having those available if you're going on a day walk. I mean, that brings on your wind and helps your perspiration evaporate and cools down your body, and your body will counteract and won't be as having as much pulse rate and stuff like that. If you're wearing clothes that's really tight on you, loosen your clothes off if you're able to. You know, I don't expect you guys to go out and have somebody that has heat exhaustion and start ripping off their clothes. Don't do that. But if you're able to, loosen up their clothes or remove their clothes. And that, for what reason do you do that? Do you guys know? To get your air going, get the air, because you already got your moisture on your skin, so you want the air to start cooling you down. And that's going to be the natural way of cooling you down. And again, if you start seeing symptoms where the person is not recovering right away, activate the EMS, get on 911, call in the professionals. But at the same time, don't stop doing anything with the person. Try to get some ice on them. Start fanning them, getting a fan on them, get them going so so when the paramedics get there, at least they'll have less of a detail to do. Go ahead, Georgie, you're raising your hand up there.
I spoke with Jim Axberg a couple of days ago. He called me back after, and he apparently had a temperature of 103 almost 2 weeks ago this past Friday. It was about 6 o'clock at night, so his wife took him to San G. They ended up, I'll try to quickly summarize this. They put him on a gurney and put him in like a small closet, is what he said, for about 6 hours. And he wasn't really getting anybody to check on him coming in, or if they did, they weren't following up on calling his wife, blah, blah, blah. He had a really bad experience for about 2.5 days. They thought maybe he had COVID. But my question would be, so he's very, very disappointed. He said the nurses were good at the hospital, but the rest of it, there was virtually no communication at all, 000. And so my question would be, if you had to do an EMS, you had to call somebody to take you, if I fainted or I felt as though I had a stroke, my question is I don't want to go to San G, but I know a lot of these ARM or these emergency vehicles, the ambulance will take you to San G. How do you say, no, I want to go to Eisenhower, I want to go to Redlands, I don't want to stop at San G? What do you do? Do I need to call ARM and ask them if they have any kind of plan B? Because I understand they always take you to the closest hospital, but I would not want to go to San G.
That's the protocol. You know, it depends on your condition. If your condition is something that you can transport yourself, you can transport yourself to the nearest facility. But usually in a situation where you're calling up paramedics and you're put onto an ambulance, it's by law, they have to take you to the nearest facility. And it's all behind liability. So you can tell them as much as you want, they won't do it. Of course, when you get to the hospital, you can always have your provider, your healthcare provider, tell them, hey, you know what, I'm not comfortable here, I'm not surviving here, I need to be moved. And then your health provider will contact a medical transport service to pick you up. And the reason I know that, I had the same thing happen to me. I was sent over to Corona Regional Hospital because that's where I had my episode. And after I got stabilized, they moved me to Riverside Community where I was living closer. and that was my go-to hospital.
Okay.
But so yeah, there's no hard good answer. You
Okay.
know, the best thing is if you're able to transport yourself and you're not willing to go to that facility, then you can transport yourself. But the minute you call an ambulance, they got to go to the nearest hospital. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But if you had like a stroke or whatever, I understand that they can administer something. Possibly ARM people can possibly do something while you're in the ambulance to try to mitigate, because they say if you don't handle a stroke within a couple of hours, you can have permanent damage.
Yeah, that's true. And it goes back to liability again. You know, you can have AMR do it, but they're going to take you to the nearest hospital for a doctor to take care of them. These guys are EMTs. They're not actual physicians. And when they do administer any kind of medication, that's under the direction of a doctor. So you're kind of
All
stuck.
right. I'll probably just give ARM a call today and find out how you can maybe go beyond their rules and find
Sure.
out. Okay.
If you find out something, definitely share with the rest of us. All right, continuing on, we're going to go on to heat strokes. This is the most serious condition that a person could get into, any person, young or old. Heat stroke is when your actual body stops to function, stops to produce water on your skin to cool you down. Your body's basically giving up. It's telling you that, you know what, you're going to die. And that's the difference between a heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Heat exhaustion, you've got moisture still coming off of your body. You're still sweating. Heat stroke is when you're not sweating at all. You're just beet red, and that's it. It's telling you body functions are collapsing. Heat stroke can kill you, and if anything else, it can damage your body. It can damage your brain. It can damage your kidneys. It can damage your liver. And of course, people over 50 are more susceptible to heat stroke. But even the younger people can get the stuff. So symptomology, the hallmark symptomology is you have a core temperature. Now, core temperature is not your outside temperature. You know how they have the little gun they put up to your head to see your core temperature. So if you're inside your mouth, underneath your tongue, inside your armpits, brachial areas. So that's your core temperature. If it's over 104, you're experiencing a heat stroke. You got throbbing headache, sounds like a heat exhaustion, right? Dizziness, lightheadedness, sounds like a heat exhaustion, right? But the main thing is lack of sweat. That's when you're having a heat stroke. Your body, your skin color is going to be red, dry skin. Your muscles are going to be weak. You want to vomit, you're nauseous and stuff like that. Your heart rate is racing, going 100 miles an hour. Your breathing is shallow because it doesn't, you don't have enough energy to push through the blood or anything like that. Confusion. If you see somebody staggering around, they may not be drunk. They might be suffering from a heat stroke. And that's when you walk up to a person, hey, how you doing? How can I help you? Is there something you need? Look at their responses. Doing CERT, we're talking about sizing up. You're sizing up a person. You're looking at him. Hi, sir. I noticed that you're staggering. Are you okay? And you're looking at him. And he's just got that blank stare or the faraway stare, and you know something's going on. They're going into convulsions. They're having seizures, and ultimately they'll have state of unconsciousness. What do? What do you start to do when you start seeing these kind of signs?
Call 911.
There you go. Activate the EMS. Don't worry about getting his clothes lucid. Don't worry about getting water on him. The minute you see the person in this condition, heat stroke, it's an emergent situation. You get on 911. And of course, once you're waiting for the paramedics to show up, you can start applying some first aid stuff, like go ahead putting water on him, getting bags of ice and putting them underneath their arms. Why do we put them underneath their arms or into the groin areas? That's where your blood circulation is nearest to the top. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're cooling it down. You're telling the body, you know what, there is hope, and then your body will start reacting to it. Okay, so putting it into the areas where your arteries are close to, bags of ice, getting them into a cool area, preferably inside an air-conditioned area. George, you got a question?
Oh, no, I'm just looking. I was opening up my screen so I could read it better.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you want to get them into a cooler area, get them away from the heat area, get them some water, then start loosening their clothes. But that's after you activate the EMS. Don't do this prior to, because you know that the situation is dire. Here's a caveat for using ice on elderly patients, because they have certain conditions. They might not be acceptable or amenable to having anything cold put on their body. They've got asthma, COPD, whatever the case may be. So be cognizant of that when you're starting to put ice on elderly people. You want to ask them, hey, is there a condition that doesn't allow you to put ice on it? Of course, if they're unconscious, you got to do what you feel is the best way of taking care of the business. Just know that some people, older people, have conditions that might not allow you or might not want you to have ice on them and stuff like that. Everybody's different. So if the person's conscious, ask them if certain things that you can or cannot do to them. Heat exhaustion, again, and stroke being alike. The biggest thing that we have is the lack of perspiration. When there's no sweat, that's a heat stroke. When they're sweating, it's just heat exhaustion. Still bad condition. Okay. During a heat wave, things you want to do normally is you want to seek air-conditioned areas. Also avoid any strenuous activity. Wear light clothes. A lot of people, even though we joke about it, but you got some of these people wearing these synthetic leathers and stuff like that, you know, or the rubber clothing, you know. They're just asking for themselves to get heat exhaustion. So you want to avoid that. When you're with your family, considering we have this education, we have this knowledge, a lot of our family members don't have that knowledge. So you want to keep an eye on them when you're out in the heat. Check for those signs, check for the symptomology. They might not realize they're experiencing any kind of an illness, but because we are now a little bit more experts, we want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I notice that you're having heat rashes. Hey, I notice that your cramps are coming in. We're going to get you some water. We're going to get you into a cooler area and stuff like that. So this is how we can be good stewards and helping other people out. Preparing your home. Make sure that you have insulation and your houses are protected. If you have a house that doesn't have curtains that block out the sunlight, or if you don't have a film over the light, over the windows, get some block-out material. Even though it looks kind of cheesy, get some aluminum foil on there. If you have attic fans, make sure that they're operating, stuff like that. So, but that's it for the presentation. You got any questions? Okay, let me turn off the recording real quick.